Hi, and welcome to the Finding Purpose in Grief podcast. My name is Evie, and this is my husband, Oren. And we're here today with my friends, my very good friends, my friend Lacy, who is a licensed professional counselor,
Yeah.
and my friend Kara, who is a registered nurse. I'm really excited to have them today. This is not a topic that's exciting, but I'm really glad that we can bring awareness to it. In preparing for this podcast, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of information out there dealing with children grieving. And this one is especially personal to me because of losing our daughter in June of 24. We had to realize that it wasn't just us that was grieving, but it was her friends that were grieving too. So I've been going on this journey with my two friends who have helped me so much in this really, really hard journey. And I think you guys are going to have some really great insights.
Yeah, we're going to look in trying to figure out how not only did their child grieve, maybe even talk to how your husband's grieved because, or how your husband's dealt with your children in grief. That's something that, us as men, we don't communicate very well or often or with each other. And so maybe that can be something that gets brought up in this conversation and, we can touch on it. And who knows, maybe someday we'll get the husbands in here and do a guys only
Yes.
podcast. Yeah.
That would be great. I would really, really think that would be very helpful to them, to everybody, well, at least to the men. Okay, so we gave some questions to the ladies beforehand, and I hope you all had time to pray about them and think about what you wanted to say. So we're just going to get started. We're going to just jump in, and the first part of our podcast is going to be about understanding the child's experience of grief, and to help you guys understand how grief looks when it shows up in kids and how it's different in every kid. So I'm going to just pose this question to both of you. Lacy, you can start first. There are going to be some questions that will be just posed to you directly because your child is in public school system and Kara's daughter is in homeschool. So their experiences might be a little different when it comes to interactions with other kids. So let's get started. The first question is, how did your child first react when they learned about, in this case, Bella's passing? Lacy.
Immediate tears, sadness. I feel like at first she this is really hard to talk about. It really is. But immediate tears, sadness. We just spent the whole day just sitting and crying, I think. Um,
Probably a lot of disbelief and just shock. That's
yeah,
for us.
it was a lot of shock. I will tell you, you brought up the husband perspective, and it was Greg who helped break the news to Gracie. I told him first, and then we brought the kids to us, and then he shared it with her, and he couldn't get through telling her what happened without crying himself.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
we were all just very, very broken, but a lot of tears and sadness.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, our experience was very similar. Um, in Jared and I, we pulled her aside because we've got two other kids and we wanted to give her a private space to kind of process it. And so I remember we took her aside into a room and we sat with her together. Um, and so we were a team, right? Like she had kind of talked beforehand about how we would tell her. But the same immediate sadness and tears. I think it took a little time for her to really process what it meant before the questions started. And after a little time of processing, there were a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things for her and really for our other kids too is up until this point, their understanding of death was that you grow old and then you die. They had no concept that it was something that could happen to a child or to someone at any age. And so their whole worldview changed instantly when they realized that that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely something that I think a lot of the kids, the friends have had to realize that, wait a second, this can happen. And I think there was, I forget whose daughter, um, had to go to the doctor or hospital or something, but they had an experience where they thought, wait, I have to go to the hospital. Maybe that can happen to me. And, that set off a whole nother set of fears and concerns that had to be addressed by the mother. And I don't remember if it was one of your kids or another
I think it was
mom.
Courtney.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I think with what happened caused PTSD in all the
Mhm.
girls, and traumatic responses, because this is traumatic.
Yep.
Like you said, Kara, doesn't happen to young kids. At least it shouldn't happen to young kids. And I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this, because a lot of people don't know how to deal with their kids in situations like this. And and I've told you guys this personally in private settings, that I admire how you guys have allowed your girls to grieve. You've allowed your girls to process what happened to their friend, and you've allowed them to keep her memory in their life, in their daily life. And our girls dance together, and they they show, like, tribute to Bella all the time through dance and
something
everything they do.
that I noticed that you both said was kind of like you and your husband, you obviously had to have a conversation first about how we're going to move forward, how we're going to tell our children, how we're going to break the news, so to speak. And so that seems like something that is pretty important, being able to take that moment and try your best at the time to internalize that together as a unit, and then have a game plan to being able to share that
And it's
with your kids.
unfortunate, but not everybody has that two-parent household where they have that, to be united like that. And I'm so glad that you guys have that, but not everybody does. And so I think going forward, I think every parent just has to take a pause and ask God to help them to say the right words, because you don't want to scare them more than they already are. So you have to have the right words. Um, and they will create, I think, they will create fears of their own, without us having to verbalize them. They will create, good example is y'all told me that on the way to recital, after it happened, they were scared that someone would be in a car accident again. So those were fears that came from them, not from you. So, we'll discuss that as we go on. But so I'm going to go on to the next question, because
Okay.
there's quite a few to cover. How did their age or development stage affect how they process the loss? So Bella was 9 when she passed away. So their daughters were all around the same age. They were all 9, 10, give or take some years there. And so how do you think, Lacy, I'll let you start this off. How do you think where she was developmentally, how this loss affected her?
I think if she would have been younger, I don't know if she would have understood the permanence of death.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I think being 9 or nearly 9, she was able to understand, I have lost my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the best way I can say that.
And for you?
Um, I mean, I agree
Yeah.
with the way you put it. Um, I had a child, or one of her siblings was, no, I can't do math on the spot here. I think my youngest was like 5 or 6 at the
Mhm.
time. And so I remember she did have a little bit of struggle understanding, because she came to the service with us and she was a part of all the things. She saw what her older sister was going through. And when the kids had questions, hers were a lot different because she was a little bit younger.
So
Um,
just grasping the full concept of passing away on earth, what that means.
yes,
Yeah.
because at least in uh, for our situation, my kids didn't know anyone who had passed away before. They hadn't lost a grandparent or anybody like that yet. So this was their first experience with that.
Which
And
probably made it harder.
I mean, it was hard for so many reasons, but
Right.
yeah, it's harder just in that it was the first time we really sat down as a family to kind of discuss
Yeah.
all of these things. Um, I might be jumping ahead here, but something that we found really helpful. I can't remember if you gave us this book, somebody gave us the book Heaven for Kids by Randy Alcorn.
Oh, yeah. I will take credit for that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was
It's a good book.
it's a great book, and we would read it as a family. And when questions would come up, we would just look for that question in the book and read the answer and have like this family discussion. And it kept the conversation open, but in a way that didn't feel scary
Yeah.
because we're just reading a book.
Yeah.
I think that's what people need to hear. I think a lot of people think that kids will get over it. They'll be fine. Let's just push it down. Let's just not talk about it. Let's not discuss it. And I think that's not good for them as they're growing up because that's something they're holding on to. Even if we don't think so as adults, I believe that they're holding on to it.
Well, if it's not good for us as adults to do that,
Right.
it's probably definitely not good for kids that are still developing in such a
Mhm.
early age and trying to figure out concepts of death and the the finality of it. I mean, we don't, we have as adults we have a hard time kind of
Yeah.
figuring that out.
And then you go into the other thing with the finality here on earth, but she's still in heaven. And that's a whole nother conversation of trying to explain she's no longer here with us, but she's in heaven and we'll see her again one day. That's a whole nother conversation in itself. So were there any behaviors that surprised you from the girls that you were like, oh wow, they're really mature and they're handling this well? Or was there a, oh man, they're taking this really hard and we're gonna have to work through some things?
Um, I'll comment first, and even Gracie will tell you that nice Gracie left. And we had a lot of anger and maybe what some people would probably call like preteen sass or something, but it was really from a place of anger,
Yeah.
hurt. She was sad. And really that's something that's good for everyone to remember is when you see an angry person, you're really seeing a sad person. Because that's how how our sadness comes out a lot of times is anger. And so, but she'll tell you now, happy Gracie's back, you know? Um, and so, but we talk about it pretty openly. We had angry Gracie. Yeah.
Nobody wants
I can
angry
understand.
Gracie.
I've been angry,
He's
Orin.
he's angry Orin.
So yeah, I've had my share of moments.
I
So.
think you could say that that's part of the grief process is
Oh,
anger, like on the wheel, the stages of
absolutely.
grief, anger is
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah, but what really helped me as a parent and just as a person is remembering when I saw an angry person, I was really seeing a sad person, and that anger was not directed at me. And you mentioned how resilient kids are, and they absolutely are when they're allowed to work through their junk. You
Yeah.
know, the unresolved trauma is where we get the problems so much later in life, right? That's where you're going to see an uptick in behavior and that kind of thing. It's a gift to allow someone to process their stuff and to work through it. That's a gift.
Well, there's
Yeah.
probably a lot of parents out there that say, not quit your crying, stop crying, this, that, or the other, for whatever, whether it's a broken arm or bruised knee or the death of a friend. Yes, you can cry for a little while, but for me, it was suck it up, buttercup, and move on. And so this is, as an adult, I'm learning how to deal with the allowing yourself to feel. And I am the guy that, suck it up, buttercup, push it down, don't feel, very even keel. And this has been a
Emotional roller coaster.
which I'm not used to. And so it has changed
It's
that.
one of
But
those roller coasters you didn't want to get on.
I would have avoided that at all
Right.
costs.
I think all of us would.
Refunds, but so back to the kids and how the kids are.
Yeah.
We'll get to us adults later.
Yes.
That's a
Yeah,
whole nother
That's a whole nother conversation.
Well, so you talked about seeing anger. Just another side of that, we saw a lot more anxiety and withdrawal.
Mm.
Anxiety just about, sometimes just getting in the car and not wanting to go on the highway or busy roads, or it would show up as, I'd be getting all the kids settled and she would frantically ask everyone, is your seatbelt on? Did you get your seatbelt on? Um, things like that. And then the withdrawal, it was really selective and she was able to verbalize this, which I was really impressed with because I could not verbalize my emotions the way that she does at that age. But she did not want to be around the friends that she had who didn't really know the situation. So, like friends outside of dance. She still loved them, but she didn't want anyone to look at her and see that she was sad and ask her, what's wrong?
Right.
Because she didn't want to talk about it. But she would go to dance class. She'd go to Gracie's house like every day. Because that's where she felt safe. Those people understood. They weren't going to ask her about it. And it was like she wanted to be in control of when she talked about it. And if somebody would ask her, she doesn't get to have that control. So that's really what we saw.
So
More than
basically, what you're
haters.
saying is if people are dealing with children in grief, allow them to have a safe space. Don't force them to be around people that make them feel uncomfortable or they feel like they have to express themselves and if they're not ready. So it's important for them to be able to have a group of people, friends that they feel safe with while dealing with that trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't forever. It was just for a season. She's
Mhm.
perfectly fine with all her other friends now.
Right.
But for a time, she needed the time and the space to process things.
She wanted to be around people that understood, knew what was going on, and didn't have to say it
Right.
for everybody to know, hey, there's something not right in this world,
Yeah.
and I don't want to talk about it. But
I
she
think
could,
that we felt that way too. Early on, I know that I felt that you four, including Lauren, that I felt like guys were my bubble. That's where I felt protected and safe. And I felt like you guys, the only people on the whole planet that understood, even before like my family, sometimes the family would make me feel weighted. And there are times where I still feel that way, where I have told my mom several times, I say, this is my safe space. This is where I feel happy. And not that you don't make me feel happy, but when we're with family, it reminds me of who's missing. When I'm with you ladies and we're having a good time and we're laughing, I don't feel that as much. Now, when we all get together, just like this past weekend, we were all together, that was difficult because obviously the absence is loud and it's even louder for me. I know it's loud for you guys though too, because you guys have been through it with me. So I think that was a really good point you made about allowing the child to have a safe space and not pushing them. I know you guys were both really good about not pushing the girls more than they needed to be. Like you were very guarded about that. And I think that's great. I think people need to know that. So we're going to go to this next part. Sorry, I hit the table. What parents felt. So we're going to kind of talk about you guys a little bit. That way parents that are going through this type of feelings don't feel alone. I think that for people like you, we're in a different boat. We didn't have to walk a child through this. I mean, we have our granddaughter, but she was 2. She doesn't remember, but you guys had to walk your child through it and deal with your own emotions. So that's a tough place to be. So we're going to try to help other people feel not alone and to know that, hey, wow, someone else feels like I do right now. And so what emotion did you experience when you were supporting the girls through this journey, when you were walking through it with them as their moms? I'll let Lacy, you can go ahead and start.
Deep, utter sadness.
Yeah, we couldn't look at each other.
Yeah.
We still barely can look at each other.
I so sad. Very angry at the person who hit your van. It's hard to say out loud.
yeah, we understand. I mean, there's got to be some conflict of, the sadness and the anger and the frustration, and just knowing that you also at the same time, like she was saying, you have to have your feelings, and your feelings have to go somewhere. But you also have a youngster, a youngin, or
A
a
youngin?
youngin,
A
um,
kiddo.
Very
a
Texas.
kiddo. Yeah, I'm Texifying. So you
Your
have to
kid?
have your kid. You have to
Oh
have
man.
the ability to almost shut off your own emotions so that you can be there for your child. And I mean, as a spouse, I've had to shut off my emotions so I can be there for her, and she's had to shut off her emotions so she can be there for me. Now, obviously, in this situation, we're talking about a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're dealing with shutting off your emotions, trying to explain and be there for them going through these emotions that are brand new. We've all been hurt, sad, upset, angry before. A lot of these kids have never gone through this gamut of emotions. So it's all new, and there's got to be some frustration as a parent. Just like, man, you know, how do I express, or how do I help them? How am I there for them when I'm wanting to fall apart myself? So
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this at length. It's the challenge of balancing. You want your children to see you grieve and have those emotions too, because you want them to know that it's okay to feel that way. Grown-ups feel that way. In expressing them, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But you also don't want to fall apart in front of them and make them have to put you back together,
yeah,
because they're the
Yeah.
child and you are the parent.
yeah,
And I grew up in a family where we did not talk about emotions and feelings in a healthy way. And oftentimes I was the, I guess, parentified child. And so I had to do a lot on myself to, I guess maybe I was just very aware of not wanting to put my child in a situation where, it would
Right.
be like that. And so I would, I mean, I don't know. I don't have like the perfect key to success in
Right.
no,
that,
there's no perfect way of
but
doing
I
it.
just know I would pause. Like, the morning that we found out that Bella had passed, we did not tell Nora right away. Um, I told my husband, and he took a few minutes, you know, to, let's face it, fall apart and put himself back together. He allowed me a few minutes to do the same. And we were in the process of getting ready for church. So we took the family to church. I was able to speak to some friends at church to let them know what we were about to have to do. And they prayed for me, which was great. But we took a little time to figure ourselves out and kind of get our own composure so that when we talked with her, we could, it was like we had to steady ourselves
Yeah,
so that we could hold her up. Um, and we still take those moments. She would come to us with like this really deep question, totally out of the blue, and I'd be completely caught off guard. And I would just say, "That's a really good question. Can I think about it? And let's talk about it after dinner tonight."
Yeah.
And that would give me a little time to like
It's amazing how deep these
figure
kids can
out.
get during times
time
like
out,
this.
pause,
And
hold on.
completely out of the blue, right? But that gave me time to like figure out, oh my gosh, what am I going to say, and pray about it. And
They're like
that,
Socrates when it comes to like before they were just little kids, and now like they have like these huge brains and these ideas. It's like their brain group five times bigger, thinking about these really philosophical things that they never thought about
well,
before.
and it was always at nighttime, because the way my kids
Always
are,
at nighttime.
they're so busy during the day,
Right.
and then you get them put to bed and they're just laying there. And so
Well,
all the wheels are turning.
that happens to all of us.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she'd come in our room late at night. We're like zombies, half asleep, and she's asking us these deep theological questions. And you're like, oh my gosh.
You're like,
So-
excuse me, I need to take some notes.
with
Yes.
Yeah.
with that statement of, or your statement of this happening, and all of a sudden their understanding and their concepts
Mhm.
are so much bigger now.
Totally.
You being a counselor, trauma, dealing with stuff like that, how does, like, what does that look like, or how is that kind of represented where a child goes through something of this magnitude? What does it kind of do to the brain in regards to the emotional side or I don't know if that's making sense, but
Well, here's what I'll tell you. I was listening to, this is gonna sound way out there, but just roll with me.
Mhm.
On the way over here, we were listening to a Forrest Frank song,
Mhm.
and it's that song Drop. And he has this verse in here that says, I'm not the same person I was before.
Mhm.
And I think that completely encompasses everyone at this table
Mhm.
and our children,
Mhm.
because that traumatic event rewired her brain.
yeah,
It rewired my brain, your brain, your brain, and your brain.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
We are not the same people we were before. And that really sticks out to me. You
Yeah.
know, and not necessarily a bad way that we're not the same people we were before. We're just not. And every day, um, and I think Kara put it so beautifully, is that you have to be strong enough to where you can hold your kid up when they fall apart, but also vulnerable enough to let them know that they can fall apart. And that all goes into that brain rewiring,
yeah,
right? And it's giving yourself, I used to have a colleague who called it space and grace. Right? Am I giving myself space and grace to feel these feelings? Am I giving my child space and grace to feel these feelings, even at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, even at these really late times at night? And I think it's how others allow us to walk through the brain rewiring, and how we allow ourselves to walk through the brain rewiring, which is going to help us process this trauma. Myself as a counselor, the month after Bella passed, I did not work a whole lot. I couldn't.
I didn't let you. You took me to lunch every day. I don't know how I would have made it without our lunch dates every day.
But also, I could not be available for people when I was
Right.
yeah,
regularly falling apart.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, your phone was blowing up. Lacey, can you call my wife, please? Lacey?
911.
Yeah,
911.
yeah,
Well, not only that, but you lived 350 feet away from me. So I was constantly,
Yeah.
asking you questions. That's
Yeah.
the benefit of living next door to a counselor.
Well,
Yeah.
and the benefit of living next door to a nurse is Gracie. We were in the car once and we had to like stop sudden, and she hit her head in the car and immediately thought she was going to die. So she threw up.
oh, yeah,
And then we got home and I was like, Kara, can you come tell Gracie she's okay?
Yes.
And so
I get
nurse
All
nurse
right.
Kara to the rescue. Time for your checkup.
You
Came and
gotta have a nurse in your friend circle. I have two. One is a heart one though, and
Mhm.
so when my heart broke, she was there.
yes.
yeah.
So
I mean, that's to the point of how kids are rewired and how they see and how their experiences are totally forever changed. To now have bumped your head and think, oh no, or I'm having to go to the hospital. Oh no, or it's just it puts a whole new set of concepts in their brain that they're not prepared for. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a hard enough time as adults, and so
what do you guys think was the hardest part for you as a parent during all of this? And just to let everyone know, we're still walking through this. Like we're a year and a half in. Um, but I think I can speak for all of us that some days it feels like it was yesterday. And some days it feels like it was 100 years ago. So, we're still going through this. So when I'm asking this question, what is the hardest part for you in general during this whole journey? Maybe not even just at the time of you finding out, but during this whole year and a half of having to deal with this. Kara will direct that to you first.
I mean, all of it was hard. All of it is still hard. The first thing that comes to my mind is um, you coined this phrase for me, but it's the burden of knowledge. Um, you
She's
know,
like, ding.
yeah, I especially felt it. Um,
what
ha-
is the burden of knowledge? Like, what is?
well,
Yes, please give us insight.
well, I mean, as parents, we carry that burden of knowledge as in we know more information and details than our children do.
Hmm.
There are still details about what happened that Nora doesn't know about, and she doesn't need to know them.
Same.
And that's part of the burden is like you're the gatekeeper.
Hmm.
Um, I like when she would come to me and ask me, especially that whole week in the ICU, if she asked me a question, I was honest and I gave a simple answer, but I did not elaborate because
Mhm.
she didn't need to know all of that information at
Right.
that time.
Yeah.
It
And
wasn't age appropriate either. They were young.
yes. And so I had that burden as a parent. I definitely felt that burden too, just being someone who works in healthcare. Um, so I kind of felt it all around, but it was just being the gatekeeper, but knowing and discerning like when to share info and how much. Um, but I wanted her to kind of connect the dots. So I would wait for her to ask me a question. I would answer it, let her sit on it for a while, and it would lead her to another question. And so that's kind of how we did it, was just one little.
Do you think your profession helped you with that? Because I know you've probably had to say hard things to patients. And so do you think you practice some of your skills even with your own child? Or do you think that that was all off the table and this is just raw and this is just new? Or do you feel like you brought some of your profession into it?
I think it was a little of both. Um, I have had to have those hard conversations with people, so I don't want to say that I'm like comfortable having them because no one's ever really comfortable having those, but I had some experience with it. I'm also really great at compartmentalizing
Very great.
on a personal level and a professional level. So that helped too. But I think what it helped me more was doing that for my friends, you know, when they would have questions about things and explaining it to other adults. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it as you gave us that question to think about and pray about. And the more I thought about it, I just realized what a beautiful picture it is of our relationship with God, right? Because He's our Father and we go to Him, but He doesn't tell us His whole plan and He doesn't tell
He
us
does
the
He
not.
sure
why, He
does
doesn't
not.
tell us the how, but He tells
Yeah.
us only what we need to know when we need to know it so that we do the next right thing in obedience to Him.
Yeah.
And so I, I just thought as such a really beautiful picture of, you know, the parent and the child. And
I think everything we do in life as believers goes back to him, a teaching moment. What are you trying to show me, Lord? And I know you guys have obviously had to deal with that with your girls. You know, what can I show them? What can I say without giving them the whole picture? Because right now they're not ready for the whole picture. Orrin and I have completely come to the conclusion that we will never know why Bella had to move on at 9 years old. We will never know here on this earth. And I don't think we're ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And I think if the Lord gave us a burning bush and told us, we would say, no, like find another way, like
Yeah.
there could have been another way.
Yeah.
This was not it. So I think he knows that. He knows us just like your girls. You knew exactly what it was. Not that you were proficient in sharing this kind of news, but you knew what your girls could handle because you knew them. Well, Christ knows us. He knows what we can handle. It goes back to that scripture, I wouldn't give you anything that you can't handle. I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I mean? And I think we just couldn't handle that because there was no answer for that.
Well, and that does go back to this question, what was the hardest part? One of the hardest parts was really dealing with my own confusion at God and anger at
Mhm.
God, and then helping my child keep their faith
Right.
strong and not turning away from God or turning away from their faith because something of this magnitude happened. I mean, something like this is big enough to break an adult, right?
Absolutely.
And so it was constantly taking it back to, we don't know God's plans, but we do know that He is sovereign and He is in control. And it was even hard to say those words because it was, I'm sure you felt this way too, but it was a lot of confusion and anger. Like, why did this have to happen?
And we all
Yeah.
prayed and they prayed.
Yeah,
they
that
put their faith out there and
Yeah.
believed for her healing for a week.
So much. And I it'll always be such a struggle remembering just trying to walk your child through having faith like that. And I'm always so thankful that um our girls had each other, right? They had us. They didn't lose connection with you.
I wouldn't allow it.
And even in a lot of ways you do.
In a lot of ways.
As goofy as they think you are. Right?
That's-
And
this is news to me. I didn't realize they thought I was goofy.
you are goofy.
Newsflash. Newsflash.
And
Learn something new
so
every day.
I'm so thankful that they had each other, and God did give us a community to get us through that, especially dance. All of their
Yeah.
dance teachers, I think, always brought it back to God. Like even the songs they chose for the girls to dance to last year were carefully chosen as a way to help them in their faith.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually going to have Anne Maurice on, which was the girls' dance teacher, and she's going to discuss the Bella production dance. And that was hard for her to do, as well it was for your girls, and even walking your girls through that. But I think dance was an outlet for them. In future podcasts, we're actually going to talk about outlets.
Yeah.
I think we'll have some questions about that too. But and dance was a big outlet for them.
Yeah.
Big outlet.
Your, worry or your statement of um, trying to make sure you didn't do anything or say anything to inhibit their faith kind of leads to the next
Yeah, the next
question.
question was, did you ever feel unsure or afraid of saying the wrong thing?
Yes.
All
Every
the time.
day, all the time. I feel that way now.
Yeah.
Like all the time. The biggest thing that I would sometimes do is very similar to what you said is the person who has the strongest faith that I know is my grandma. So what we would do is if Gracie would ask me a question and I would say, "You know what? I'm going to go ask Mimi." And so we would do that. I would ask Mimi and like give her the answer, or that book Heaven for Kids by Randy Alcorn. We would go to that. And one thing I just had to learn is that I was probably just the best medicine.
Yeah.
And even if I didn't know what to say, if I could just be there, then that was helpful. Even if I was there, she could just be angry at me, then that was helpful.
Yeah. Even as adults, I mean,
Yeah.
we've come to the understanding of we might say the wrong thing, but we have to have that grace with each other
Mhm.
to understand that I may say something and I think we argued over a $20 parking pass one time, it turned into this big, huge thing. And afterwards, we realized, I think she said to me, we're not mad at the $20, for paying this little ticket. We're mad that Bella's not here. And so, you know, we said all sorts of stupid stuff, but it wasn't, there was grace for having said that.
We knew what the underlying thing was. We knew that it was because Bella wasn't here.
Yeah.
That's why we weren't mad at the $20, and the girls weren't mad at uh, a ballet shoe that didn't fit
Mhm.
or a pair of tights that had a hole in it, or they weren't mad at that. They were mad at their friend is not here.
Yeah.
And they're angry that they have to deal with that now.
Did you guys notice a lot of that where something seemingly unimportant or trivial would turn into a
Huge.
huge thing? Like did the feelings of dealing with this get put into, I bumped my knee or I lost this and it's all of a sudden just a big, huge ordeal?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of like a specific moment or story, but definitely I think everything was
Magnified.
magnified.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. And I think I remember hearing some stories about Gracie.
Yeah, and I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head, but what I do know is when you experience something like this, your body stays at a state of ready, expecting to experience it again. And so there was a lot of on edge, almost like,
Mhm.
well, who else is gonna die? And I hate to like even just like say it like that,
Yeah.
but we all just stayed like on the edge of our seats. Like, what's the next bad thing that's gonna happen? That's gonna come out of nowhere right? That's like our worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Well, and even we experienced that because I do remember it was the girls had a dance class that summer and Courtney was running late.
Oh, yeah.
And without even thinking, I think I just picked up my phone and called her and was like, "Where are you?" Because it was just too familiar.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you
and
guys know me. I always make you guys text me when you come home or when you get home, or when you her card graciously lets me know when she's on her way.
I just put share my arrival time with Eddie, and it
love
like
it.
randomly texts her
That is wild. She
where I
asked-
am.
I said thank you, Traverse.
Yeah,
Yes.
she asked, "Does our car do that?" I'm like, "No,
Has
our car
no
does not
idea.
do that."
We're obviously not that cool.
well, and we even went so far as to like we shared our husbands' phone numbers with each other because we were like, if something happens, like you need to know,
Well,
or my
that
spouse
day
needs to know your number.
you couldn't get a hold of because
No,
I don't even think you had his number at the
No,
time.
didn't.
I think you reached us through Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's how
don't.
you did
So
it.
now,
remember.
so now we're like everybody has everybody's number.
Emergency
Yes.
contacts all around.
Yeah, because you hate to live like that. But this kind of situation makes you like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to, that's part of
Well-
that change you were talking about. That's just something
Yeah.
we do know. My kids know when I leave on vacation, I have to see them before I leave. I don't care what you're doing. You're going to come see mom, bring the grandkids. You're going to see me. I like to even see your girls. If I can see you guys before I leave, even if it's a week before I leave, because it's hard getting us all together sometimes, but I want to see y'all before I leave. I also keep in contact with you guys when I'm, that I think I did like a whole, like a video diary when I went on my 21-day vacation, sending y'all videos. And just because I can imagine how that would feel if I'm on the road and you don't hear from me for a week or two. I can imagine the feelings of that again. So maybe I'm hyper vigilant now. Maybe I'm a little bit more, I don't know, more thoughtful of that kind of stuff than I was before.
Yeah.
But it's just because I don't ever want, I remember the first thing that you said to me when you walked in the hospital doors is, we couldn't get a hold of you. We didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. And I was like, I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm never going to not let people know where I am, because that has to be, it's a horrible feeling. That has to be a horrible feeling to not know where your friend is and if they're okay, and the trauma of that. So that's probably why I'm weird and do like a whole video diary for you guys. Okay, so before me and Lacy start crying, we're going to take a break
That sounds good.
real fast.